listening to the president's speech. Because when the Supreme Court judgment came and recognized the Rivers State House of Assembly members led by Martin Amewuli, this governor, and they demanded that he represents the 2025 appropriation bill.
Yeah.
He did not say he will not. As a matter of fact, the governor came out and said he will align with the Supreme Court judgment. And he reached out to these persons that he wants to come. As a matter of fact, after writing to them, he went there. They didn't let him in. So I don't think the president was...
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I don't think the president was fair just heaping the bulk of the blame on the state governor. And he did not mention Wike. He did not mention Wike, which is his political ally. That Wike should focus on the FCT and leave all of that.
There's a lot to be done in the FCT.
Yes. Yeah. And leave Rivers State. He didn't mention that. He said that the governor incited people, and when he made that statement, the governor should have been wise not to make that statement. That's the balance of that. When he said, when it's time for us to act, I will tell us we will know what to do and all of that. He referenced that. But he did not reference Wike when Wike was saying, who are the job people? You should go and do this. He did not do in that media chat. Wike said things that he should not have said.
Yes.
He did not say anything of such.
Well, Wike has been known to make unguarded statements.
But the president should have cautioned him or faulted him the way he faulted Fubara.
Yeah.
As though that was not enough. When he said that, so the hope was that, of course, the National Assembly, they have to veto what the president has said.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, from legal experts, we're saying it's not constitutional and all of that. So the National Assembly, from the House of Reps to the Senate, they have to vote, and both houses, they have to get 2/3 each from the House. So the statement was made on Tuesday. Pronouncement of state and emergency was made on Tuesday. On Wednesday, the National Assembly convened, but both houses could not vote on the matter. And when they could not vote on the matter, I said something is fishy.
Something is fishy.
Something is fishy. So they had to go and regroup. Some they said they did not have some persons were not present, so they needed a fuller house and all of that. And yesterday they voted. And the painful thing, and that's what some people were going, they voted via a voice vote.
Yeah.
Now the question is, how do you ascertain 2/3 of a house with voice votes?
For such a sensitive issue.
Yes. So, Chizzy, what do you think about this whole thing in general?
Ogaga, I will just touch on a little bit. I'll start with the video that trended about the girl that you were talking about. Well, I don't see any lies in what she said. I don't see any lie. Well, I have my opinion, but you know what? I guess this is the point where we have to call our paper analysts to come talk about some of this issue. And if I have the chance, I would also talk about some of my my views on this issue. I don't think the girl lied. Someone actually went to the market to do a market survey, and we even found out that things were even more expensive than what the girl has said in the video. Now, if the presidency have some love for a citizen, I think this is the point where they have to come together and work on making the country a better place.
All right, yes, we'll leave it at that because we have to move to our next stop, which is the paper review. After this break, we'll be joined by our analyst. Please stay tuned. Good morning, sir. By 8 o'clock, I did not see you. I didn't know that. Welcome back to the morning right here on Delta Television. It's time now for our paper review, and we've got the Nation newspaper this day, Vanguard, The Punch, Daily Trust, Nigerian Tribune, The Guardian, and Daily Independent. We'll start from the Nation newspaper, and the lead here says, Ibas assumes office, warns against sabotage, disorder. We've got three riders. The first, Senate. House OK Tinubu's emergency rule declaration. President hails lawmakers' patriotism. Fubara, no hand in oil pipeline bombing. Okay. He has come out to refute that, because earlier the Attorney General of the Federation said the governor of Rivers State did not refute any connection to the bombing of the pipelines. And above the masthead, we have 25% oversubscription of first Holdco's 150 billion naira rights issue paves the way for its private placement of 350 billion naira. Still more headlines from the Nation newspaper. Police raise death toll in Abuja gas tanker explosion to 10. Nnamdi Kanu's trial begins afresh after 3 years. Southwest spends 800 billion naira monthly on cow meat. Federal government's MREIF secures 250 billion naira for housing. Payment of 77,000 naira allowance to youth corps members begins, says NYC DG. I hope it really begins this time, because this is not the first time they're coming out to say this.
Yeah.
Brazilian firm bringing multi-million-dollar investments to livestock sector. And the rider, 2 Interpol watch-listed suspects arrested. And lastly, from the Nation newspaper and sports, Eagles in win on bust World Cup qualifier against Rwanda. And get details of that story on page 31 of the Nation newspaper.
All right, these days newspaper is the next daily here on our table. And first here, the screaming headline says, Rivers National Assembly ratifies emergency declaration. Tinubu hails. And there's some riders to that story. First rider here says, meets behind closed doors, says it will oversight sole administrator. Another rider here says, recommends committee of eminent countrymen to reconcile Wike Fubara. Another rider here says, Pandef, Tinubu stabbed us in the back. And the last rider here says, political lawyers, groups, others, stakeholders condemn Senate House. Okay, we have at the top strip here, we have this one that says, Fubara denies link to attack on oil pipeline. You might want to know what that's about. This one here again says, Ibas resumes duty in government house. For this and many more, do grab yourself a copy of the This Day newspaper.
Next is the Vanguard newspaper. The major headline, Rivers crisis, anger as National Assembly approves emergency rule with voice vote. We've got lots of riders. I'll just take a few. Proclamation needs two-thirds majority vote of lawmakers for approval. Approval done with unanimity without a single nay, and this is coming from Akpabio. 64 senators signed attendance register, quorum not formed, and this is coming from sources. And another rider, Rivers Sole Administrator reads Riot Act to trouble makers. Atiku, Obi, Amechi, Fayemi, El-Rufai, orders reject rule in Rivers. Still more headlines from the Vanguard newspaper. USAID's alleged support for Boko Haram unproven, and this is coming from Tulka. And because of time, lastly from the Vanguard newspaper, Emefiele's trial. Court rejects EFCC's request to file additional evidence.
All right, here with us we have the Punch newspaper, and the Punch newspaper is packed. First here, the first buzzing headline says National Assembly backs Tinubu as Fubara counters president's allegation. That on page 2 and page 45. And the writer to that story says suspended governor blames Wike. South governors oppose Tinubu Ibas wants pipeline vanguards. At the top strip there we have this one that says APC backs Tinubu as Atiku Obi Erufai intensifies coalition talks. And that also is on page 45. Now, if you look at the bottom part of the Punch newspaper, we have this one here that says FG panels reconvenes Monday over Naira for crude crisis, and that's on page 29. Another story here says FG pardoned 4,000 prisoners, saved 1 billion naira on feeding. Okay, that's by the minister. So this and many more you can get on the Punch newspaper. Do grab yourself a copy.
Moving now to the Daily Trust newspaper, the lead. Atiku announces coalition against Tinubu, and the writer, President cannot be distracted by sore losers. And this is coming from one of his spokesperson. He said, Ononuga. Rivers crisis. Doubts over quorum as NAS approves emergency rule. Abuja accident, agency calls for blood donation as death toll hits 10. And lastly, from the Daily Trust, core members will get 77,000 allowance this month, and this is credited to the NYCG.
All right, we have the Nigerian Tribune, and first here on the headline says after NAS approval, Abbas assumes duty, vows to restore law and order. The writer to this story says his mission requires collective support from all stakeholders. Another writer says without nay votes, reps, senators approve president's requests. This writer here also says asks administrator to report to NAS, not FEC. Senate wants eminent persons to resolve Wike Fubara disputes. And this writer here says Tinubu salutes National Assembly. And the final writer to that story says South Governors Forum says declaration did not meet constitutional provision. And other stories are on page 3 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. Now this story here, making almost every daily, says core members 77,000 naira allowance takes effect March, and this is by the DG. This next story here says Ibadan Stampede, or your government withdraws case against Naomi Ariyomi principal. Okay, we have the stories dwelling on Rivers. Says Tinubu, Babacha Lawal, Erufai, others reject emergency rule. The writer there says tax NAS judiciary to save democracy. This last writer says accuses Tinubu of bias. This and many more you can get on the Nigerian Tribune.
Okay, for the last two papers, we just take the major headlines. Now, to the Guardian, thrones for hire. How politics corrupt process taint traditional institution, rail stools. You can get that on big story pages 4 and 5 of the Guardian. And the last headline I'll be taking from the Guardian, still the major one. National Assembly faces backlash over state of emergency approval. Fubara denies culpability.
All right. The Daily Trust, the Daily Independent newspaper is the last newspaper we have here. And first the headline here says lawyers query NAS determination of 2/3 by voice vote. The writer to that story says as lawmakers okay state of emergency in Rivers. This story here, for want of time, says 2027 Atiku Obi Erufai others form coalition against Tinubu. The writer there says asks president to restate Fubara and deputy. Huh. All right, that's that. The Daily Independent has a lot more stories, but you need to grab yourself a copy of the Daily Independent newspaper.
All right, so we're back to the studio, and of course, we have been joined by our paper analyst in the person of Meshach Oza. Good morning, sir. Welcome. It's good to have you.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning.
Welcome.
Okay, so let's dive right into it. The major screaming headline across all the dailies has to do with the Rivers crisis.
Yes.
And the Vanguard puts it this way: anger as National Assembly approves emergency rule with voice votes. Now, I will read the riders, but let me just put this question alongside this headline. How can you determine, because according to the Constitution, 2/3 from both houses have to give their assent to this. Now, how do you determine 2/3 of the House of Reps and the Senate with a voice vote? That's that. And let's go with some other riders. Tinubu has stabbed Niger Delta in the back. This is coming from Pandem. And the South governors reject emergency rule. But Edo State governor, which belongs to the APC, he says it's not part of them. So though he's in the South, but he said he's not joined to that rejection of the emergency rule in Rivers State that the South
because he's equally part of a field system. He's equally it's somebody that have come into power through a stolen mandate. It's an indication of a true reflection of what's happening in the country, basically. Let's go straight to the details. We're looking at a situation that our kind of democracy is a comedy of errors. The democracy we practice in Nigeria is a comedy of errors, and a comedy of errors thrives on illegality. First and foremost, constitutionally, there was no provisions on Section 305, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution. It says, yes, the president has the right to pronounce a state of emergency subject to an approval from the National Assembly. But that was not, we had an executive fiat, a dictatorial pronouncement. We were like a country that is in a state of anarchy, and he made that pronouncement. Now, it's when you look at democracy, like governments, like we're taught in the university or in secondary school rather, we have three arms of government: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. It's expected that these arms of government should and must be solely independent and autonomous. Now, when we're talking about autonomy here, we're talking about, most importantly, financial autonomy. If the three of them are autonomous, there's no way the executive will have influence over the judiciary and the legislature. But what we have practicing in Nigeria is a situation whereby the autonomy has been eclipsed by the executive. They subjected the other arms of government to become pawns on the chessboard of the executive. They take decisions prior to when the pronouncement of those decisions are made public. Now, a lot of people do not know that leading up to the pronouncement of the state of emergency, there was a meeting with the Senate leadership and the National Assembly leadership, rather.
Stakeholders. The morning before.
Yes, a morning before the pronouncement, the night before the pronouncement. And after the pronouncement, before the pronouncement of the voice vote yesterday, there was a meeting with the same stakeholders with the president. Now, what is happening in Nigeria is a state of anarchy. Mr. President and his cabal are trying to subject the opposition to neutrality. They're trying to neutralize the opposition in view of 2027. And that is not a practicable
democracy. So can I come in there? When you're talking about the opposition, now, the president had meetings with the stakeholders, not the opposition. So where did the voices of the opposition go?
Now, when you talk about
because that's the question. So because when you consider everything that is happening now,
yes,
we are looking at the house is made up of, and you know the thing, the APC, especially because I'm aware of in the Senate, the APC in the Senate does not have the 2/3 that is required.
Yes.
Now,
so they need opposition as well.
When I'm talking of the silencing of the opposition, I'm speaking basically not opposition. In the National Assembly, understand something, they don't have opposition.
Okay.
That's what I want.
So who is to
understand.
blame?
Now, in the National Assembly, I'm talking of external opposition, the likes of maybe Peter Obi, Atiku, Sowore, Adeonju. Those are the kind of opposition. Opposition voices, not within the corridors of power. But when we're talking of opposition now, what did they do? The opposition, that's why they did not use true hand counts to get a true reflection of two thoughts. They use voice vote. It's just like,
wouldn't the hand count have been better?
It would have been better,
Yes.
but it shows what would fit the
Favor them.
situation. A voice note. Now they are more in number, even though they don't meet two-thirds of the. But now when they do the shouting votes, their voices will suppress.
And even sources,
that is
according
what-
to the Vanguard, sources said the Senate did not form a quorum. So
The Senate
they're saying
never
that
formed a quorum. The Senate didn't form a quorum. A quorum is formed when two-thirds of the majority, two-thirds of the totality of the House,
as
they are in agreement with the decision. A quorum wasn't formed. I really want us to understand what is happening. A script is being acted out. The script is a teleguided script that the federal government has given to the National Assembly to enact, to act. So whether you like it or not, the producers of this script remains wicked.
Okay.
The director is the president. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Mesha, let me take you back a little
Yes,
bit.
please do.
When Obasanjo was president, something similar to this played out, and our current president Tinubu kicked against it. He was not in support.
I will refresh my memory. Yes, that was.
And then when Goodluck
Jonathan was the same thing.
was same thing. He did a state of emergency on Borno, but persons are coming out now to say that the case that happened in Borno and the present case right now in Rivers State are not the same thing. And I'm wondering what can be as bad as what was going on in Borno.
Now, when you look at the 2005, Obasanjo pronounced the state of emergency in Plateau State.
Yes.
He did not remove the governor. Tinubu shouted.
Yes.
On the 11th of May 2013, of course, on the 12th of May 2013, there was a pronouncement of state of emergency on 3 states, Yobe, Adamawa, and one other state, Borno State,
Yes.
in the north. The governor, Jonathan obeyed the law, the constitution. He did not remove the powers of any elected officer.
Yes.
And of course, the state of emergency then was premised on the rising crisis in those 3 states.
Yes.
That is why it happened.
Yes.
On the 13th of May, a day later, Mr. President came out to say it's unconstitutional that Jonathan was breeding a trend. I want to use his language. Was building a trajectory, something that might swallow Nigeria. And today, the same you has come to repeat that. Now, where did it
added more?
And added made it worse. You made it worse. It's like a military dictator. It's like a coup in Rivers State. Now, let's understand something. The logical reasoning for Nigerians and anybody that is well abreast with the situation in Nigeria vis-a-vis Rivers State, if there is anywhere that a state of emergency should have been pronounced, because state of emergency, go to your dictionary at Google, state of emergency pronouncement comes as a result of rising and escalating insecurity.
They say bombing of pipelines.
I'm coming. I was going there. Bombing of pipelines. Just in the 2 pipelines were bombed. Was anybody's life at risk? If there were any states that should be seeing state of emergency, let me tell you, the states, Borno, they should have declared state of emergency.
Yes.
Kaduna, they should have declared state of emergency. Benue, they should have declared. Fulanis are killing every day in the south.
And kidnapping
and
as well.
kidnapping in northwest, in the northeast, and in the north central. There are states that people have been chased out of their villages. You did not carry our security agencies to go nip it in the bud. You did not declare states of emergency. You did not put sole administrators there because they are APC states.
So
now you come to Rivers State. Now, logically, I like to logically and chronologically assess situations. Now, when you look at what is happening in Rivers State, these are things. Rivers State's issue is a political issue. I expected that Mr. President, with due respect to his office, should have called Nyesom Wike. Nyesom Wike is the biggest problem in Rivers. They should have called him to order. If Wike says, yes, my boys, it's okay. My proteges, it's okay. Let's allow sleeping dogs lie. But the same Wike instigated the bombing of the pipeline was not related to the governor, but it was more related to the pronouncement of Nyesom Wike on the Ijaw nation. It angered the Ijaws. They were not. The Ijaws are the fourth largest ethnic groups in Nigeria, and you said such. They are minority. You insult the psyche. Ijaw is there in all the South states. They are in Lagos State. indigenous of Lagos State, are indigenous of Ondo State, are indigenous of Ekiti State, are indigenous of Edo State, Delta State, Bayelsa State, Rivers State, Akwa Ibom State, you name it. And you say they are a minority in your small river state. This is a situation that has been caused by Yeson Wike, premised on his greed and avarice. He looks at Rivers State as his personal investment. No matter what we are practicing today, we're not practicing democracy. We're practicing democratic anarchy. And until we change that trajectory, our democracy for 2027, man, there's going to be so much to think about.
Now, you said a lot. Lastly, on this Rivers crisis, the Attorney General, because now most persons, they are coming out to say it's unconstitutional, the state of emergency that was declared. Now, a very prominent person in the legal space of Nigeria, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Tv.Friday SAN, he came out to defend the president's stand. Look, so what do you have to say about his?
Totally. Look, Latif is part of. It's just like when you are producing a movie. Nyesom Wike, the producer, the director, Mr. President, DOP, Tv.Friday. These are the same people that they are acting out a script that is premised on the expectations of their principal. There's no way they're going to be deviating from the facts. The facts are there. But then you're distorting the facts because you want to satisfy certain person's onions. And that is where we have an issue. Unfortunately, Nigerians are far more intelligent than rhetorics, like the likes of Fagbemi. We're supposed to be the number. Look, if you listen to Fagbemi's speech, you know he's speaking from two sides of his mouth. He's looking like somebody that's a charge and bill lawyer. I wasn't impressed with the narration coming from the Attorney General and the Commissioner, or rather Minister of Justice. What an embarrassment.
All right, Mr. Meshach, I would want you to comment on this issue that has to do with Natasha. It has been trending. When you think it's about to, end, new revelations come out. This one here from the Guardian newspaper says, "I endured Akpabio's sexual advances for over a year." Natasha alleges. Just throw.
Let me tell you something. Natasha will not be alleging if there's no element of truth in that. If you look at the trajectory of events happening in National Assembly, a lot of them, look, every strata of our indigenous, even in DBS, even in the civil service, women have been subjected to sexual harassment.
Even in DBS?
I said even in DBS, even in civil service, women have been subjected to sexual. I'm trying to bring you home so that you understand. Every strata of our life.
Allegedly.
It has not been proven. Okay, probably you are just coming. No, there's no problem. So moving forward, sexual predation is something that has been in the society. Natasha, if she has evidence, what I was reading, I said, Natasha, please help Nigerians on this one. Bring us written evidence. You people must have exchanged text messages,
yes,
or received or verbal evidences. Let us put the legislation to shame for once, because what they want is evidence. The National Assembly is a hood of misplaced priority, men with misplaced priority, and this kind of people cannot lead us. When you listen to the way bills are being projected, Natasha, I believe every bit of what she's saying. I believe it.
Has seen evidence.
Don't worry, the evidence.
I guess she's trying to bring out the evidence.
Yeah,
okay.
she's trying to listen. I'm telling you they're acting out the script. Natasha will bring out the evidence at the right time. They want to look. You don't want to jump the gun yet. She has spoken with confidence. That means there's something, because she knows the weighty allegations. If they are not substantiated, you can be libeled.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Mesha, please very quickly let's go to the NYC, because the NYC is a body that people really don't talk about, but I believe, and many Nigerians believe, that there's a lot going on with the NYC that needs to be uncovered. Now it says call members to receive 77,000 naira allowance from March. This is not the first time that they're talking about
but this one is real. This one is real.
And
this
the
one,
video trended.
Yes, because it is not because the government likes call members. They should know that.
Okay.
Every Nigerian copper should thank that young girl.
Okay.
That she did what she did. Well, because of the trending of that video. That is why they are doing this now. Okay. And I want to congratulate COP members. I know what you people go through.
Okay, so our last story we'll be reviewing will be from the Daily Trust. Atiku announces coalition against Tinubu. Are you in support of a coalition ahead of 2027?
Man, that's a long story. Whatever it is, there's no saint amongst our political elite. Whether Atiku, whether the only person, I'm a political, but the only person that comes with a level of transparency is Peter Obi.
In your opinion?
In my opinion, as I say, I'm a political. But in as much as it is, I think whatever will remove Tinubu from power, because what is happening, we're looking at a country that is degenerating into dictatorship. Because when army, the military, air force comes to look at Government House Port Harcourt yesterday, I wept. Look at the whole of Rivers State. We are attractive. Let me tell you something about it. Once the military sees the perks of office of democracy, the temptation for there to be a pogrom will be there. Tinubu, Mr. President, might be making a mistake with that pronouncement, but time will vindicate us.
All right, thank you very
Thank you
much,
so much,
Mr.
Mr.
Kosa, for
Thanks
your
for
time
having
and
me.
for your analysis. It's always a pleasure having you on set.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
All right, it's time now for us to move to our next topic, which will be the last guest interview. And the interview is centered on judicial accountability and reform, to be analyzing Nigeria's Supreme Court controversies, and will be joined by two lawyers. Do stay tuned. In this segment, we are honored to have Barrister Precious Wandimuya, a distinguished legal professional and former chairman of the Nigerian Bar Association (NBA) Asaba branch, a doctoral research candidate at the University of Benin. Barrister Wandimuya brings a wealth of academic and expertise in public and constitutional laws, commercial law, and legal reforms. With extensive experience at Nord attorneys and solicitors, he has been actively involved in shaping legal discourse within the Nigerian legal community. His influence extends beyond courtrooms and academia. He is a well-known legal educator and public advocate, regularly enlightening the public on legal rights through Know Your Rights, a popular legal awareness program on Voice of Delta Radio. As a dedicated legal mind with a strong presence in professional circles, including his active engagement with the NBA Aspa branch, Barrister Wandimuya is deeply committed to justice, legal advocacy, and reforms that strengthen Nigeria's judiciary. Today, he joins us to provide expert analysis on judicial accountability and reform, dissecting recent Supreme Court rulings and their broader implications for Nigeria's legal system.
Also joining us on the program today is a distinguished legal expert, Barrister Favor Ajwebo, the principal partner of FN Ajwebo and Associates, a reputable firm specializing in corporate, property, and litigation law. Based in Asaba, he serves as the external solicitor for Oshimili South Local Government Council, providing legal guidance on governance and policy matters. A seasoned legal practitioner and strategic thinker, Barrister Ajwebo is a senior member of the Chartered Institute of Public Diplomacy and Management, where he contributes to shaping public policy and governance strategies. Beyond his legal expertise, he is a renowned human rights activist, passionately advocating for justice, fairness, and legal reforms in Nigeria. His deep insight and constructive analysis makes him a respected voice in legal discourse and governance. With a wealth of experience in litigation, corporate law, and public policy, Barrister Ajwebo brings a unique perspective to today's discussion on judicial accountability and reform, offering expert analysis on the recent Supreme Court rulings and their implications for Nigeria's legal system. We are honored to have him with us. Welcome to the program, Barrister Ajwebo.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good morning to you both. It's a delight to have you on the show. And today we'll be considering the topic Judicial Accountability and Reform, analyzing Nigeria's Supreme Court controversies. It's very sad that when we are talking about the highest court in the land, we are also using the word controversies, because this is how Nigerians have seen it, and that's why you two are here to set the record straight and right. If indeed there has been controversies in some of the rulings, or it's just because it's laymen interpreting it as controversies. Now, my first question would be to you, Barrister Wande Muya. Is the judiciary in Nigeria really independent? Because this is one aspect that Nigerians have been saying, that no, we don't have a judiciary, because there's this saying that the judiciary is the last hope of the common man. But people said the judiciary is no more the last hope of the common man. After the last election, when the case went to the tribunal, talking about the presidential election, there was this hashtag, eyes on the judiciary. That's to tell you the distrust that Nigerians now have in the judiciary. So, as someone in that arm of government, and as you experience a former NBA chairman of Asaba branch, now, do you think the judiciary is truly independent? Truly, emphasis on truly.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here this morning to join in this conversation, and it's really important that the public begins to engage, because it's one of the pillars that makes a governance to work in any country, and that's the role of the public in holding their systems and their institutions accountable. And so it's a welcome development that we are discussing this, helped by the democratization of information. So unlike before now, where the Supreme Court would give a decision and we can only find everything about it in the law books and the case laws, most times they are out there in the public before we know it, before we actually even read what they actually said. So yes, sometimes the people misinterpret what they hear, or even give slants to the decisions of the court with a bias in mind. So talking about the accountability, the independence of the judiciary, I don't think any system can, or any institution under the democracy that we operate, the presidential system of democracy that we operate, can truly be independent in the sense of the word independent. Yes, they can have autonomy, but to say independent, why? Because they depend on the executive and they depend on the legislature for some things, and that's where the doctrine of checks and balance comes in. So they cannot be divorced from the entire system of the governance structure in Nigeria. So, but if we talk about autonomy, are they autonomous in taking their decisions? Do they take their decisions independently of interferences from other arms of government or from people? Don't forget that there are people, the Supreme Court or even the judiciary are peopled by human beings, and these human beings have interactions with the public, they have interactions with members of the other arms of government, they have interactions with their neighbors, with their church member, with the society in general, at one level or the other. So there are structures put in place to limit those interactions. For instance, we have the code of conduct for judicial officers that sets parameters that limits the level of their interaction with the society at large. So but it cannot entirely obliterate that interaction. And so in the course of these interactions, you can expect that there will be some form of interference or the other. For instance, a legislator, a senator in the National Assembly once stood up in the House and said that I want to thank my wife for allowing me interfere. Yes, for allowing me interfere. Although it was later denied or they tried to explain it, but the truth is that comment had been made. Why? So the judge is somebody's husband or somebody's wife, and so that person who closely stays with her that must have a way, in one way or the other, interact with respect to what is happening in the courtroom. So it now lies on the judge to obey the limitations put in place by the code of conduct for judicial officers. So that, to that extent, I will not say that the judiciary is independent, if you want to use the word in the strict
Neither
sense.
is it truly autonomous. It can be influenced because
The possibility is to influence them is there, but the decision to remain uninfluenced lies with the judge.
So when you, now that you've asserted and we're on the same page, we've agreed that judges can be influenced. Now, what punitive measures does the NBA take, or even the judiciary in itself take, when a situation of interference or bias has been established? Because we hardly see such situations. Like you stated now with this former senator, Okachua. The case was just swept under the carpet because the wife was actually the former president of the Court of Appeal.
Yeah. So in response to the Bukachua case directly, Bukachua was no longer a judge as at the time that I think she had retired, as at the time that insinuation was made by the husband. And so the body that the constitution set up to look into misconduct allegations against judges is the NJC. That body did not have jurisdiction over her anymore. Okay, so but nothing could have stopped any citizen of the country or anybody who has a public interest in mind to have taken it up as a case, to report it to the police or to report it to relevant security agencies, to take up it as to take it up as a case against him, for him to prove that allegation or for him to explain further what he meant, because that singular word uttered by that man, ran through a lot of cases. Maybe the cases of all the members who were sitting in that house, maybe some of them, their cases appeared, so the cases could have been investigated, to see to what extent did the influence of the man affect the outcome of those decisions.
So the NJC didn't have jurisdiction to investigate those cases? No, not the lady now, just the cases.
The job of the NJC is to investigate human beings, not cases. All right, so anybody could have, maybe for instance, maybe the matter had not been exhausted on appeal, so you could have gone to court to say my case suffered because of the action of Bukachua, or you can even make a case to the, you can even take up a case to the police to say because of the allegation of corruption that has been admitted by the husband, I failed in this case, and you are able to establish that it was because the husband influenced her. That was why the outcome of that decision was like this. So the onus of proof will still be on you. So to prove that it was interference of the husband that affected your case, and that is why it turned out against you. So, but the NJC will not investigate the cases. No, the job of the NJC is to look into the misconduct of judicial officers. The role was created for them by the Constitution of Federal Control.
Okay, so Barrister Ajuebo, what is the impact of public trust when it comes to legal proceedings in the judiciary, and how can the judiciary help to maintain the trust that the public have on them? Because there are some rulings that comes out and people are not okay with it, and they said judiciary, like Ogaga said, is the hope of the common man, but with the rulings and the proceedings and the outcomes, many people are tending to feel like judiciary is not the hope of the common man, the last hope rather of the common man. So what is your take on that?
Now, it is very important for people to understand that when judgments are given and it comes to the general public, sometimes we lawyers are more particular about what is being litigated before the courts. What are the processes that will be filed? What are the facts that are contained in that process? Because sometimes a matter may seem public issue is not a court. Court deals with facts and how those facts are being established. All these things put together will now determine the outcome of courts. Now, coming to public trust, I can assure you that in the time past, there have been several judgments that appealed to the general public. There are so many judgments that actually achieved that. So, can we now say that because a judgment appealed to general public, that there's no more trust in judiciary, and because thereafter they now dissented, that there's no longer trust? So it all depends on what is before court. Now, I can agree with you to the extent that the court can dissent on earlier decisions, and that is why initially we were told that the Supreme Court is infallible because they are final. But sometimes they also review their judgments. So they also made us to understand that they are fallible, but they are final. You know, so that means they can review their judgments. They can dependent on what is before courts. I agree with you that there can be influence. There can be all manner of digressions. You know, there can be interruptions. Yes, quite all right. It depends on the situation on ground, but the effective and efficient judicial function is dependent on what is placed, on the material fact that is placed before court, and not what is before the general public.
Okay, so above facts now
Yes.
that is placed before the public.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to seemingly controversial issues,
Yes.
now what are the roles that the court play in ensuring that above the final proceedings and the final judgment, we tell the public that this is what we've done, this is how we've done it to arrive at this?
Yes.
Because there are some times that there are some rulings that the court have the final say on, and when it comes out, people are not comfortable with it. So what modalities have the judiciary put in place to sensitize the public on these issues and make them be abreast of current situations as placed in the court before
Alright.
arriving at these outcomes?
Okay, I can tell you for free that anytime judgment is given, of course, that judgment is being furnished to the general public, either by way of law reports and through every other means. You know, you can also apply for the judgment. It becomes a public document, so you are entitled to, by virtue of the freedom of information, to apply for any public document, a certified true copy, and it will be furnished to you. And every reason, the Supreme Court doesn't just give a decision, or any other court doesn't just give a decision without giving you the reasons upon which that decision was arrived at. So you'll be furnished a document or a copy of that judgment for you to know the basis upon which that decision was taken. So one part of what judiciary does is to furnish it before general public. You can look at it and see the reasons why such decision was taken. I think that is part of what judiciary does. And sometimes we too can come to the public, we legal analysts can come to the public and say, this is the reason for their judgment, or this is what we feel. Or if there is an aberration, we can say this is our own opinion. You know, so if the matter is being done at the trial court, you have the opportunity to vent it at the appellate court. But when it is finally decided upon, we take it as our fate, because that is the final.
Okay.
That is the final.
So you made a statement, Barrister Joybo, that Supreme Court verdicts can be reviewed.
Yes, it can.
So what do you mean by review? Do you mean that, for example, if they had initially said that somebody was guilty, they can retrieve that and say the person is not guilty?
It's possible.
And on what grounds?
It's possible. It's
So in what situations do they review their judgments?
Now, judicial review have its own procedure. It has its own format, and it has its own application. So when for instance, now let's take the case of P2B, the case of Imo State governorship tribunal. For instance, after a decision was given in favor of Hope Uzodinma, there was a judicial review, and one of the justices of the Supreme Court gave his own opinion to the extent that he agreed with the application for a review. But his opinion is just one among others. So if other persons had told his direction, of course, that decision will be set aside. The earlier decision will be set aside. So, of course, if a judgment is given at the Supreme Court, we have what constitutes the panel of justices at the Supreme Court is 5 and above, sometimes 7. So if 4 or 3 to 5 is going towards another direction, and 2 is going, of course, the 3 we skate through. So what we're saying is, when a judicial review is being brought to the table, of course, if the justices told towards that direction, more number of justices told towards the direction upon which the review is brought before court. Of course, it will say
So
true,
the-
and the earlier decision will be set aside.
Okay, let me just.
So and
comment on
also
this
the
one.
justices the justices that review the case, are they that do the review? Is it the same justices that sat over the case in the Supreme Court?
That's an internal administrative
Okay,
judicial
and
function.
Okay, so let me just comment on this issue so that we don't get it wrongly. Judicial review is a technical term, all right, in the sense that the courts have a review. Have the jurisdiction to review administrative actions of other arms of government. All right, so that's in the technical sense. Then, in the sense in which you are using it, it means maybe looking at a decision that was taken by a court.
Yes.
So, for instance, the High Court has appellate jurisdiction to look into decisions that proceed from magistrate courts, which are the lowest courts. They have jurisdiction to look at decisions that emanate from the customary courts. All right, so to that extent, they can review the decisions of the courts under them. Now, the Court of Appeal is a higher level of court with powers to look into decisions that emanate from the High Court. Okay. Now, the final court in the land is the Supreme Court, the apex court, and it has the powers to look into decisions that come from the Court of Appeal. So, if you bring a complaint from the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court can look at it. So, like you mentioned earlier, the Supreme Court is the final court, is the final arbiter in all cases, and beyond that, you can only take your case to God. All right. So, there's no other place to go to ventilate your disaffection with the decision of the Supreme Court. However, under the slip rule, there's what we call the slip rule, where a decision is given, and then instead of saying yes, the Supreme Court wrote no in the decision. If you look at the analysis of what they said, the answer they are not supposed to give at the end is yes. They now wrote no there, maybe by typographic, and you believe it's typographical error. If you read it, you will know that there's something disjunctive. Yeah, exactly. So you can come back to the Supreme Court to ask that they should look into that and correct that slip or correct that error. So to that extent, they can correct themselves. But to correct the judgment and to tell them to look at the judgment again, that they were wrong in their analysis or in their decision, that they will slam you with cost. For instance, Afe Babalola and Oladipekun were slammed with cost at a certain time and they were told that they were going to pay it individually. I think 30 million naira each, for bringing such an application before them, because you are telling them to change their decision, and that's more like challenging the authority of the Supreme Court. So that is not allowed in law.
So, Barrister Precious,
Yes.
Looking at the Rivers State legislative crisis and the judicial intervention, this is something that's been going on for a while, and if not taken care of, if the thing escalates, it's going to be a big problem, and more people are going to be involved in it. So, what role do you think that the Supreme Court should play in mitigating all of this and bringing peace? And the second question is, did the court's intervention in the Rivers State legislative crisis, did it set a useful precedent in the first place?
Now, the joy I have in all of this, of what is happening in Rivers State, is that it displays the what do you call it now? The extent of the independence of the three arms of government. What I mean to say is that it is possible, all right, for the three arms of government in any state or in the country to be truly independent in the sense of our political situation, where most of our houses of assembly are yes men to the governors. So if not for the person of Wike that is in one corner that everybody is looking at, all right, I'm sure that Nigerians would have been happy at what is happening in Rivers State to say that, oh yes, the House of Assembly is able to stand up to the governor, because most times we are not happy with the way our houses of assembly are run. They are essentially, in most states, are essentially yes men to the whims and caprices of the governor. So, but in Rivers State, the House of Assembly is standing up to the governor, The only problem we have with it is that it's somebody that is swelling it. Otherwise, I'm sure you would have been happy that, oh, thank God we have seen the House of Assembly that can stand up to the governor and that can challenge the governor. All right, because in the true sense of what is happening in Rivers State, it's a political situation that should have been solved politically, but unfortunately the court was dragged into it. Okay, the court was dragged into it, and the court is a court that does not operate on sentiments. They operate on hard facts. They operate on things that are brought before it at that point in time. For instance, one of the major issues they decided in the Rivers State case was whether the governor can start spending state money without presenting it for appropriation before the House of Assembly. All right. If not for Wike, let's remove Wike from the picture. If not for Wike that is somewhere hiding, I mean, like a big brother hiding somewhere, I am sure that your answer will be that it is not correct. The governor cannot go and be spending money without presenting it to a House of Assembly. That's one aspect. The second aspect is it correct for the governor to present the appropriation bill to a 4-man House of Assembly? Is it possible that if 4 people can constitute a House of Assembly? It's not possible by any means that 4 people or 3 people, as some persons say, can constitute a state House of Assembly as against 27 persons. You know, so these are hard facts on which the judiciary decided its matter. The Wike's interference was not a fact before the courts, and so it could not construe it into it.
But how do you think that the ruling of the Supreme Court concerning this matter will influence the legislative impact on Nigerians, and then how Nigerians will now begin to view the judicial system?
Yeah, so I am hoping that our legislatures in other states where they are not having somebody controlling them, because it seems as if somebody must control them. So since the governor is not controlling them, somebody else is the one control. They should know that the Constitution has safeguards. You know, what the Supreme Court decision has done now is to tell us that there are constitutional safeguards that preserves you. So if you stand up to the governor, don't be afraid that the governor will remove you or will recall you, or I don't know what they are even afraid of, or will deny you your funds, because you have your own powers. You know, that is what the Supreme Court decision has just shown now, that the legislature has its own powers aside the powers of the governor. So, but everybody believes, we tend to believe that the governor is omnipotent and he has all the powers, and so everybody must defer to it, even including the judiciary that we are talking about now. They are afraid, whereas they can actually exercise their powers. In this country, the judiciary has removed governors. Judges have removed sitting governors from office. So I don't know why all the other arms of government are afraid to exercise their constitutional functions to the fullest, without the interference of the executive arm. They all defer to the executive arm. They keep saying, the governor is powerful, the money is in his hand, everything is. So, but what the Supreme Court decision has shown us is that the governor is not that all powerful that as we used to think about it. You know, the judiciary has its role under the Constitution. The legislature has its role under the Constitution, and they have checks and balance against each other. So the fear the governor is having now is the fear of impeachment. All right, and because that is the power of the legislature, the legislature has against him, but they don't exercise it because they are afraid. So, but because he knows that they have that power, and the Constitution, the judiciary has restored that hope to them, the governor now is wanting to even talk with them, which is what is supposed to happen. That's why I said that initially this thing is supposed to be a political situation. There's solution. They're supposed to seek to resolve it, and not a judicial one.
Okay, in as much as I have a lot to say about this Rivers issue, because of time, let's talk about something else that's pressing for me. Self-defense. Now, in defense of a farmer by the name Sunday Jackson, and a verdict was given recently, early March, I think March 7th, thereabout, where a case that happened in 2015, almost a decade ago, that so it was alleged that a Fulani herdsman attacked him in his farm, and as self-defense, he was able to overpower this herdsman that attacked him and even injured him, stabbed him, and he killed the man. And now a verdict has been passed that he has been sentenced. That's Jackson now, the farmer who killed the Fulani herdsman in self-defense, sentenced to death. What do you have to say? Can you just enlighten us a little on what the law says on self-defense and what could be the reason that the court ruled in favor of the Fulani herdsman and sentenced Jackson was defending himself to death by his time paper?
All right. When it comes to self-defense, first of all, it's good to clear it before the general public that self-defense is a case to answer. So automatically a case to answer. That means you should come and tell the court how you defended yourself in the course of the said action. So that is one. So people shouldn't see it as a total exoneration from trial. Then going to your question. Now, self-defense is such that your self-defense must commensurate with the action that is putting you in fear of death. For instance, you are someone wants to use a stick or an object to attack you, and you use a gun to bring him down. It does not commensurate.
So somebody cannot use stick or bottle to kill me?
No, you can't. So the two objects.
But someone can club somebody to death
with a stick.
Do you have an escape route? If you have an option to escape, and you forget about the option of escaping from the scene, you now decide to.
While I'm running, I can still be clubbed. No, now in this situation, this Sunday Jackson was stabbed. It was established that he was stabbed.
Yes.
So this is somebody
he's laying the general principles. Yes. So maybe we should.
Yes. Yes. So if you were stabbed, you can as well stab too. You were stabbed in the leg. You can as well stab in the leg, except you allege that you just you couldn't control your defense.
So they stab me in my leg.
So
I have opportunity to stab you. I will stab your leg back.
Yeah. So it depends on how you allege the situation. So it depends on the facts and how you establish it. You know.
Okay. So let me intervene.
Okay. Okay. You want to continue? So it depends on how you are able to establish the facts. You know, every issue are unique. That there's a case of self-defense in this in scenario A may be different from the case of self-defense in scenario B. So it depends on the uniqueness and how that fact is being presented before the court. So if you are alleging self-defense, quite all right. It depends on what you say, the circumstances, like I said. If there was an escape route from that place and you neglect that escape route, you now decided to resort to your strengths, or maybe you felt you have a higher strength and you now activate it and use it to overpower the other person, thereby taking the person's life, then that issue of self-defense will not be given a second thought. So everything depends on what is brought before court and how it's being said, and how the said action took place at the scene of crime.
Wow, this is another this is another topic I can go 30 minutes on, but very quickly because
all right. So he has made the point that self-defense does not exonerate you entirely. It can give you manslaughter, make you guilty of manslaughter. Now, for this particular case that we're talking about, the Sunday Jackson case, I had the privilege of speaking with the lawyer who handled the case at the Supreme Court, and what he said is that the decision of the Supreme Court was a split decision. There were five-member panel. 3 supported the case that it was murder, all right, while 2 dissented and said no, that it was self-defense. So to that extent, there may be reason to believe that some of the facts we have in the public space is true. Why I'm saying that is that the judgment, the certified copy of the judgment, in fact the full reasoning for that decision has not been released yet. The Supreme Court just gave their general decision on the matter. They have not released the full reasoning. So who's saying the lie? The judge was not there. All right, the judges were not there at the scene of the crime, so they can only act on what they are told in court, the facts that are presented to them in court. So the judge had the opportunity of listening to the person and see the demeanor to know whether or not he's saying the truth. So I want to imagine that maybe he had the strength. If you had the strength to kill somebody, that you could have had the strength to run away. I don't know. But the story out there is that he was able to overpower the man who was stabbing him and stabbed him back, and then he died. So, but the fact that there's a split decision, all right, 3-2, shows that there is some merit in the case of self-defense, and I want to believe that there is some merit in the case of self-defense.
So going forward, because we cannot.
Let me also say something too. If upon the stabbing of the header's
the farmer's leg.
yes, so yeah, the farmer's leg. No, not the farmer, the header. No, let's assume that the farmer was stabbed on the leg too, not on any sensitive area that must have taken his life. So if upon the stab and that person died of loss of blood, I don't think that person can be guilty of murder. Yes, if the autopsy report says that this person died of hemorrhage, loss of blood as a result of the stabbing, so then at that point the situation may change. But if the stabbing is in a sensitive area such that the person's life was not taken automatically as a result of the sharp object, maybe the shock, of a particular sensitive area, then it becomes a serious, it becomes a different issue.
Yes. For instance, I was in a career talk recently, and I told them that in law, killing is different from murder.
From murder, yes. Yes.
So,
killing is different from murder. Because I may hit you, you may hit me, and I hit you, and you fall on the ground. It may not be murder. They will not check the cause of the death. Autopsy may reveal that you died of maybe high blood pressure. Not the fact that I hit you. It may not be assault. It could be high blood pressure. It could be some underlying health illness. That
is that this Supreme Court decision has shaken that opportunity to
promote the fact that I may have retaliated based on shock or defending myself.
No, he says something. He says something that you must understand. At the trial level, that is why issues are being subjected to trial. Do you know what is trial? You have the opportunity of examination in chief. You have the opportunity of cross-examination. You have re-examination. So all these things gives us the opportunity to x-ray an issue holistically to be able to arrive. So the judge does what we call evaluation. He does evaluation. The judge looks at you. He looks at your demeanor, according to what you said, your body language. He looks at your expression, and to know whether you are telling.
I would have asked for that question, but if I ask this question, maybe I'll ask it off camera because of time. But let's move quickly to reforms in situations like this. Because honestly, because the certified true copy is not out, one of the things I'd love to do, and I've gone to see it, and also look at the names of the 5 judges. Also, part of the things that fuel the distrust when we hear stories like this. So, what reforms, what can the judiciary, and what is the judiciary doing to win back the trust of the common man?
Yeah, so quickly, I would like to, one area where I am not comfortable with the action of our Supreme Court is the fact that political cases are given speedy attention to the detriment of other matters. For instance, you just mentioned that Sunday Jackson case started in 2015. All right, whereas, and so it traveled from Supreme Court to Court of Appeal to to Supreme Court in 10 years. And whereas the Constitution says that particularly cases that have to do with the life of a citizen, they have to be given speedy attention. That's what this then the Constitution. You must be tried within a reasonable time to know your fate, particularly death sentence matters. All right, but a political case, reverse case, just started in 2024, and already it has traveled from High Court to Supreme Court to from High Court to Court of Appeal. It started in July. It was the Federal High Court matter was filed in July last year, and this is we are not even up to July yet. So it's in less than 1 year, the 3 courts have heard the matter, to the detriment of other matters. Why? Because of unnecessary interest to please our politicians. I don't know why they hold so much. They have so much stronghold over all our systems and the judiciary. So civil matters, commercial disputes are suffering. If you go to the Supreme Court, if you file a case in the Supreme Court now, be sure that you will not get a date until before they will hear your case, maybe in 2028. or 2032.
So,
You know, so but if it's a political matter that's the one that is obvious to me.
so as
you know,
displeased as you are, what can you do to create reforms that will change this?
so the our courts must begin. The NBA, I'm aware, is already shouting about this. You know, it's already shouting about this, that we can't be giving attention to political cases to the detriment of other matters, particularly other more important matters. What do we have with the politicians that they must hold us ransom? For instance, now, if 2027 election is coming now, before you know that, they will start doing pre-election matters. Once pre-election matters start, all the courts will just abandon their work. Then the next thing will move to the main election litigation. So they are causing other matters to suffer. And so the Supreme Court must begin to extricate itself from the influence of the other arms of government and begin to assert its autonomy in taking its decision. It must stop dancing or wanting to please the politicians, but do their business according to how it is. It is stated by law.
Okay.
So,
Barrister Precious, so now that this matter of this farmer and this header has been brought to the fore with the general or final ruling on the matter, what is the hope of the common man, common farmers particularly? And then, isn't there any perceived fear over headers who have continuously killed farmers, and most of them are not caught concerning this matter? What is the hope of the common man if this comes to be that this man should be sentenced to death at the end of the day?
Well, I am aware that there are some groups that are advocating for clemency, asking the governor of the state to grant him pardon, because he has been convicted, so they are pushing. I know international community is interested in this case because of
and start interpreting what is not. You can't put something on nothing and expect it to stand. So there must be something that is placed before the
camera. Because
if you don't go, we will not cover it. We all
don't cover it. You are the ones labeling it. We are all guilty.
It's also good.
Stop covering it. The money belongs to government. The judiciary you are talking about is also part of the government. It's just that it's not the one that generated the money. There's a body that gathers all the money.
But let me also say something. Yes, Nigeria is good in paper, but the problem is its implementation.
Okay.
Although we have a 40 grand law, yes, our constitution is fraud. However, we still have some good legislative or paper framework in a way that Nigeria would have been better. But implementation is the problem. So no matter how we come up with reforms and policies, if implementation is poor, you can do little or nothing about it.
Yes, thank you very much. Welcome back. That was an interview on judicial accountability and reform. I believe that would be a call to the judiciary to do the needful, to be accountable to the common man, and once again redeem themselves in the eyes of the Nigerian citizens.
Yeah.
Yes, and of course it was a very explicit session by Barrister Wandi Muya and Barrister Adwebo. This is the Morning Right Fridays edition here on Delta Television. It's time for us to leave the studio, but just before we go, Cheesy, let's have the last words.
Right, as we drop the curtains, I just want to let you know that today being the 21st day in the month of March is World Syndrome Day, and unfortunately, people still discriminate against special children and children who are going through some ailments. Today, as much as you can, try to stop segregation or looking down on children living with Down syndrome or any kind of disorder at all. They are special people, and some of these persons even do great in life. Well, that's where we draw the curtain.